Hello everyone, my name is Moji. You're watching a Bitcoin Bubble news channel. Surprisingly, if you spend a lot of time on Twitter, for example, you'll hear that some of these billionaires are the only thing that keeps us from total tyranny, to quote a recent tweet from Michael Schellenberger, right? Also, this idea that these rich people can solve all our problems, Trump is one of them, right? People have been led to think that the only thing we can do as a society and a country is trust a small group of billionaires with our future. Whitney Webb was recently interviewed on Tales from the Crypt TFTC, and they talked about the looming line of digital ID and central bank digital ID and central bank digital currency CBDCs. At the time of the conversation, Bitcoin was moving between $1.60 and $6,000. It has gone up 4% in the last 24 hours and 14% in the last 7 days. Webb goes into great detail about how Bitcoin is very different from CBDCs, which could lead to centralized control. She talks about how Bitcoin gives people power over their own money, while CBDCs could be used to spy on and control people. The importance of digital IDs in the changing financial world and how they might affect personal privacy are also talked about. I agree with you. If we allow ourselves to be a part of these digital ID systems and the financial surveillance systems and programmable, trackable currencies that they've been working on, it will be much easier for them to force people to buy things like carbon credits. So I think that's part of the plan. The same people at the UN who came up with the idea for digital IDs, people like Mark Carney and Mike Bloomberg, are also behind this carbon credit thing. It's possible that they designed the whole system, including the shareholder capitalist model and all that ESG stuff. They really enjoy all of that. And I don't think they're going to leave that market just because some people don't like it. It seems like they're waiting for the right time, like when enough people are used to these systems and there's a crazy state of monitoring where your face is your ID and all that. They can see everything you do, everywhere you go, and everything else. And computers get bigger and more annoying. We've reached a point where, supposedly, all brain-machine interfaces, like Neuralink and others, will be available for business use in the next couple of years. It gets pretty crazy then. And I think it will be much easier for them to force this kind of stuff on people then, when it would be hard to do now, as soon as you have those kinds of rules in place. And I think that's why, so many of the SDGs and UN documents don't work without a digital ID, right? You should also know that the digital ID parts of the SDGs are built into SDG 16, which is closely linked. In other words, Interpol is the partner in putting SDG 16 into action. To keep the peace, it's about building strong organizations. If you look at it more closely, like Ian Davis and I have done in our work on the SDGs, especially SDG 16, it's about totally controlling speech online. This is because, censoring all dissent is a key part of making peace in this world. Online, no one is arguing anymore. I think we've fixed the issue of hate speech now. Oh no, you just stop people from talking. That's not the same as giving Interpol all the power it needs to become a world police force, which is what it's really wanted to be for a long time. But you have people who like the idea of this digital entry-exit system, which is what I meant by SDGs, that's Interpol. It has something to do with digital IDs and the UN's plan for financial equality. But you should know that all of this is bad. When you think about what it's leading to, and if we have that kind of system, or like peace through surveillance, mass surveillance, and peace through a police state and all that, then yeah, you can have a very authoritarian, totalitarian government rule over a society, a country, or the whole world. That's peace, you can say. Most people don't think of that, though, when they see the fancy words they use to describe SDG 16. But if you read what it's really about, you get a very different picture. They can't do it without digital ID and this whole monitoring system. And they're counting on partners in the private sector a lot to help them build that, right? But again, as we've talked about before, and as this article makes clear, Panopticon has been a public-private partnership. It's been these private companies run by the same group of Silicon Valley oligarchs who all have some kind of link to Jeffrey Epstein. That's how close they all are. Have you heard that I've done this with QTEL funding or some other kind of federal backing? Almost all of them, I'm pretty sure all of them have the biggest tech companies work for the government, either as contractors for the military, intelligence, or other parts of the government. So, I don't think it's fair to call some of these VC groups venture capitalists. And, they believe in the free market and, stuff about American success stories. That is, they are there because a certain network picked them and made sure they would do well. And there are a lot of centers for those kinds of networks near the one we work with. And the piece we've been talking about today is called Endeavor. The Bronfman family, who I write a lot about because of the Epstein scandal, and Pierre Omidyar of eBay are behind it. It also has a lot of ties to the PayPal network, since Reid Hoffman is one of their top guys. They also trained a lot of entrepreneurs in the global south who now run fintech companies in Argentina and other places. These entrepreneurs have ties to people like Steve Mnuchin, Cantor Fitzgerald, and a lot of the debt barons who run intelligence-linked satellite companies and other things. There are a lot of very upsetting plays going on right now. And I think it's not getting enough attention. Someone needs to explain to me why banking the unbanked tether is investing so much in brain-machine interfaces run by people like Steve Mnuchin, who is the chair of the boards and was the secretary of the US military before becoming the chairman. Satellogic is like keeping an eye on both the grain and the stuff. Yes, already making plans to, do that. And they already have a business in Argentina called AgroCoins that is backed by visas and all that. That's trying to move that play forward in terms of Argentina's farming industry. But the last time we talked about Marty, it was because they were trying to get this group of companies to agree to a carbon market, right? So once more, these are efforts. I think what we'll see from this network are efforts that have never been seen before to make new markets where none have existed before. So a lot of this is done with the rush to tokenize real-world assets and the push to move into natural capital, which I think we've talked about for a few years now. And the idea of protecting natural resources or the global commons, which includes the oceans, rivers, lakes, streams, and other things like that. Richard Sander, who used to work at Drexel, came up with this idea. He looks a lot like Bernard Burnham Lambert, and he made derivatives and other things. I guess you could say that he wants to make a private market for clean air and water, like the carbon market. So guys, get ready for your real air tax. These are people who are making money and want to make markets the way this crowd does. This quote by Larry Fink always comes to mind. Markets are like totalitarian governments in that they can force people to buy things they don't want. That is, this is what took place. This is how China does things. That's why people like Larry Fink really enjoy it over there. The market gets help from the federal government. It's like having centralized power over markets in order to keep them under control. And people would say, no, I don't want to. Why do we need this stuff if it were a free market play? It's not necessary. They can also try to get people to agree with them by making people afraid of things like climate change. It didn't work in the end. How do they